Welcome, everyone. We are so thrilled to be together with you in person. It is so special that on my drive over here today, I felt a little teary-eyed. It feels so special to be back in person and to see so many of you and to be together, celebrating life and enjoying ourselves together. I want to welcome all of you who've joined us today. My name is Erica Danziger, and I'm with the JCC of Northern New Jersey. We are the new reimagined JCC who goes beyond a building to meet you and our community everywhere we are, in synagogues, in playgrounds with the little ones. Last month, we met with little ones in the apple orchard. So we pop up everywhere with great flexibility and mobility, and we're so glad to be here with you today. I would also like to welcome our Zoom participants. I'm pointing up at the camera. I hope they're waving back. I want to especially welcome our Hadassah members. Can you give a wave if you're a Hadassah member? Hello, my friends. Yes, you can clap. It's great to be together. That's exactly right. Thank you for that. I'd like to, with that, have a special thank you to Arlene Weiss and Hannah Price and the rest of the leadership team from Hadassah. Hannah, you can clap again. Go for it. We're so happy to partner with you on this program and our future programming. We have programming coming up once a month. We'll tell you more about that at the end. If you didn't catch a flyer, we'll make sure you get one with a chance to register today for all of our upcoming programming in October, including our partner program with Hadassah, Pascack Valley chapter. We're so thankful to Temple Beth Shalom for hosting us in their beautiful sanctuary. We're so fortunate that this is a great partnership. And we'd like to especially thank our speaker, Miriam Kraemer Gray. We're so glad that she could be with us today. I know many of you have a history with her, have a connection to her, have heard her speak, either at the former YJCC or with Hadassah, or perhaps with the Holocaust Museum, and I know you're just as thrilled as we are to have her here with us today. I would like to turn it over to my dear friend, Arlene Weiss. Thank you so much. If you want to come up here so Zoom can see you well.
You basically said everything that I was going to say, but I wanted to welcome everybody. I'm Arlene Weiss, president of the Pascack Valley, Northern Valley Hadassah chapter. And I'm so glad you're here. We had an incredible turnout, at least 31 here and almost 86 on Zoom. So we're going to try to do a Hadassah program every single month with Erica here at this location on Thursday mornings from 10:30 to 12:30 or 1. And it's basically to keep it social. We're following all the New Jersey state guidelines of social distancing, eating outside as long as we can, and wearing masks. And I'm just so thrilled that all of you are here and that you feel safe coming. Each time you come here, there will be another program to sign up for the next month. Otherwise, you can do it online too. So I'm glad you're here and enjoy the presentation today. I'd like to introduce Hannah Price, who is a past president of the Hadassah Valley, Pascack Valley chapter, and she's going to introduce speaker Miriam Gray.
Hello, everyone. Okay, let me do it this way. So we're going to talk about Miriam Gray for a few minutes. So most of you know a lot of this, but just in case you missed something, Miriam Kraemer Gray has been involved in Jewish education for over 50 years. She graduated from Montclair College with a degree in speech therapy and theater. And I can tell you a little bit about the theater because Miriam was in so many of our Hadassah productions and she was an outstanding actress. So, you know, she excels in everything she does. So while she got her degree from Montclair, she also received a Bachelor of Letters degree from the Jewish Theological Seminary. And then Miriam taught at Fair Lawn Jewish Center and received a Master of Arts degree in Jewish education, as well as a principal's certificate, again from the Jewish Theological Seminary. She also served as educational director for the JCC in Paramus and Temple Emmanuel in Woodcliff Lake. And she has spoken at national education conferences, and she has taught at teachers training workshops. For us, she also teaches Jewish adult education courses at Temple Emmanuel. Many of us have heard her and her wonderful presentations at both Temple Emmanuel and, of course, at Hadassah. So, the credits go on, and I'm not going to give you any more, but she says that her most important accomplishment is being the grandma of 4 exceptional grandchildren. And they're beautiful too, right? All right, so it is my honor to present to you Miriam Kraemer Gray.
But anyway, to begin with, it's been such fun seeing everybody and talking to everybody. And everyone, thank God, looks well. So again, I'll say B'li Ayin Hara, which is, how do you say it? Kraemer Hara. All right. I do not know Yiddish at all, except for Kepi and Henti. So we're going to talk about superstitions. I'll preface it by saying I'm not at all superstitious. But we will go on. So let us first understand exactly what superstition is. And the definition given by Joshua Trachtenberg is superstition is an irrational belief that holds that happenings can be influenced by specific, unrelated behaviors or actions. It is a way of controlling or thinking or events in your life which you otherwise cannot control. So with that being said, according to archaeologists and anthropologists, superstition has been around from prehistory. Our ancient ancestors, long before history, were superstitious. Why? Because their lives were very difficult. Prehistoric man, woman, did not know if they were going to have food for the day. Their food was always a problem. They were hungry most of the time. They did not understand natural phenomena like earthquakes and rainstorms and thunder. So their whole life was very difficult. Child mortality was a given. So in order to combat this, these prehistoric people figured that all these bad things must be happening because there are mean-spirited demons that must be around. And so as far as we know, superstition predates our history. And it was alive and well with prehistoric man. We ourselves have our own superstitions. There are people that say, well, this is my lucky shirt. Every time I wear this shirt, it's lucky. So, and talk to kids. They'll have their favorite sneakers, their favorite shirts. We all have our own little superstitions that we hold very dear. Then there are bigger superstitions. And we will see today that many of the superstitions which we think are Jewish are not Jewish. They crisscross cultures, geography. Some of them are universal. So let's go very slowly in history. Again, before that, we have 2 other things to clear up. One, because I'm extremely sensitive about it, to the point of being neurotic. A mezuzah is not to keep away evil spirits. A mezuzah is on your doorpost because the Torah tells us to put it on the doorpost. And the reason is that it contains the Shema, where it reminds us to follow God's law day and night, wherever we are. So the purpose of the mezuzah on your door is not a superstition. It's for you to remember each time you leave your house, you are responsible to observe God's law. We're going to get back to Lilith. Just a reminder about men and women. There are two creation stories, in the Bible. Chapter 1 of Genesis is one creation story. Chapter 2 is a different one. Chapter 1, man and woman are created equal, and they're the same. Chapter 2 of Genesis, God creates Eve from Adam's rib. And there you have the problem. So we'll go to Lilith. She was a demon. She was supposedly Adam's first wife, and she was very independent and wanted to go out on her own, didn't want to cooperate, just wanted to do her thing. So she became, in Jewish lore, and not only in Jewish lore, she's a very well-known personality in the ancient Sumer. Ancient Sumeria, not our Samaria, but ancient Sumeria, is in Iraq. And actually, in Sumer was the city in which Abraham was born, in Ur. Lilith was very well known in that environment. She was the wife of Adam, who was thrown out. And she has returned to haunt, to undermine, to steal children, to harm pregnant women. She's a nasty lady. She got cleaned up in the 60s when the feminist movement took her on as a symbol of women today who are independent and educated and cultured. But we still have Lilith's superstitions. So among those superstitions, because we know she's after newborns. So if a baby boy is born, you may not reveal his name until his Brit Milah. At his Brit, he is given a name. Until then, you are not to mention the name, because as you know, in magic and superstition, your name is your essence. And we will return to that. But among the Orthodox, the name of a baby boy is never revealed until his Brit Milah, because it is at that point that he is under the umbrella of the Jewish community and is protected. A baby girl, from the time of her birth, as long as her mother is Jewish, the baby girl is considered part of the community and is safe. There are many superstitions around the world about childbirth, and they're all very similar. Jewish custom, many people put a red ribbon on the crib. Many people put a red ribbon on the baby. And we're going to discuss the red ribbon later on after we get out of Lilith and childbirth. Jamaica, there are stories in Jamaica that the women actually may wear red underwear to protect themselves while they are pregnant. They have also found that in the Philippines, the culture there, they put a red ribbon on the baby's crib to protect the baby from Lilith and other demons that may want to attack a newborn baby. In childbirth, the mother is also protected. And in some Sephardic Jewish communities, the baby and the mother are surrounded by a circle of chairs, and they remain in that for 7 days so that they are protected. Parenthetically, you may not take a baby boy out of the house until after his Brit Milah, because he is not protected. This is very, very similar to the Catholic belief that you may not take a baby out until after his christening. And it's with the same reason that once the baby is christened, he is therefore protected. Now, if we want to talk about names, we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. Naming is very interesting. There are many different customs. Many of them are ubiquitous around the world, and many of them are only ours. Among names, the Ashkenazi, which most of us are, custom is to name after a deceased relative. Because if you name after a living relative, these evil spirits may get confused and may attack the baby instead of the adult. Among the Sephardim, they only name after the living. And just FYI, both Ashkenazim and Sephardim, the firstborn son is named after the paternal grandfather, but Ashkenazim after the deceased and Sephardim after the living. And the second son is named after the maternal father. So that's a little thing there. Some of the Sephardic customs are slightly different because their culture is slightly different. If you name somebody after someone who has passed away, you add the name Alta, which means old. So a friend of mine recently called me to have me help him with the tombstone. His mother's name was Gittel, but she was known as Alta Gittel, which means old Gittel. Why? Because she was named after a young woman who died very young. And so you want to mix up these spirits. So you call them Alta, that she's already old. Some people, if their child was very good looking, but hey, all our kids are, right? But you would name them something that would be ugly. And it's not politically correct. And I wasn't going to reveal what the chosen name was because it's not PC. And I may get arrested by the politically correct police. But they would name a child Ethiopia if the child was very good looking and they wanted to downplay their good looks. And that goes back to Ethiopians, but those of you who have been to Israel and who have visited Nahariya and the Ethiopian community, they are gorgeous. They have tiny features, they're beautiful. But that was sort of an insult to make these evil spirits think the child isn't so beautiful, to leave the child alone. There's another very interesting superstition, which the conservative movement, we do not observe too well, mainly because of the bar bat mitzvah nonsense. But family members should not follow each other for an aliyah, because it's too much good too much honor. And so they should be varied. But today, when a synagogue has a bar or bat mitzvah, it's usually the grandparents and the parents and the uncles. But in an Orthodox synagogue, that would never, ever take place because you don't want to show too much goodness because the evil spirits, again, will upset the apple cart. My name, by the way, is Miriam. By luck. I was to be named after my father's mother, who had died maybe a year or two before I was born. My mother told the story that she was beside herself in tears because my father's mother's name was Sophie. And when I was born, that was not a cool name. Today it's come back. And my mother said she was so upset, crying. She said, how could I name this poor baby Sophie? And my father's eldest brother saved the day. He said, that's not our mother's name. Her real name is Miriam. But she was violently ill, and the rabbi came to the house, and there's a ceremony. He changed her name to Sophie, and she got better. Why? Because you're tricking the evil spirits. They're looking for Miriam, but no, her name is Sophie, so she was fine. So there are many of these weird naming stories. We do not name children after living parents. We're also, if you are a widow or a widower, you may not marry a new spouse who bears the same name as your deceased spouse. And that, again, because you are confusing the evil spirits, and they may think that the dead is still dead and will harm that person. These are all weird superstitions that have grown, and many of them from experiences that people may have had. We'll go for a minute. Yes, you're also, again, because the problem is you don't want to confuse the evil spirits. So you as an individual may not visit the home of a sick person who has the same name as you, because the demons can get confused and may harm you. So that being said, we're going to go on to mirrors, because that's very important to us in Judaism. Mirrors are supposed to capture the soul of the person. In the ancient world, it was believed that your soul regenerated after 7 years. Thus, if you break a mirror, you have 7 years bad luck, at the end of which your soul regenerates, because your soul was disrupted when you broke the mirror. We find the problem of broken mirrors even in American Indian lore. American Indians, if a mirror was broken, they smashed it and put it into a stream so it would get washed away. In ancient Rome, they would smash it into dust and destroy it, because in that mirror is the spirit of the person who was looking at it. So what does this have to do with us? When there's a death in the family, you cover the mirrors in your home. Most people will say, when people ask them, it's because we're not supposed to look at ourselves. That's not true. on a realistic note, while you're sitting Shiva, you shouldn't be worrying about how your hair looks. But that's not the reason. That could be a reason that's given. The reason is that the mirror holds the soul, even of the departed who lived in that house. And you want the departed to stay away after his death. So you cover the mirrors because you don't want the spirits to come out. And that's really why we cover the mirrors. Now, the other thing dealing with death is washing your hands. Torah has many laws concerning our proximity with a dead body. It makes for impurity, and that's another lecture for another time. The difference between what is pure and what is impure. But a dead body is impure. So why do we wash our hands? You only wash your hands if you went to the cemetery and stood at the cemetery when the person was buried, because now you have had contact with the dead body, with death. And so when you return to either the house of mourning or to your own house, if you don't go to the Shiva house, you are still responsible to wash your hands. Some people wash their faces and they wash out their eyes to make sure that this is all gone. So that is the reason that we cover the mirrors and the reason that we have the pitcher of the water outside the house. Which leads me to another very cutesy superstition, which I never understood until I started looking these things up. When I was little, if I lost a button or something on something that I was wearing, my mother, before she stitched it, would tell me to chew on a piece of thread. And I would always say, why am I doing this? No, you have to chew on a piece of thread. The reason being that the only time something is sewn onto us is when we are dead. They literally sew the corpse into the shroud. So if someone is sewing something on you and you're chewing, you are moving, and these little demons who follow us around will not think that you are dead. So that's why. Did anyone else have this experience with the? Oh, I thought I was the only one in the world. Oh, okay. So that's the reason for it. Oh, that's funny. That is very funny. Here I thought I was the only one. And I always teased because my mother's family was from Holland. So I said, oh, that's why. Okay, so the red ribbon. When you're in Yerushalayim and you go to the Kotel, actually, I have to preface this by saying that this did not happen to me when I was at the Kotel 2 years ago. And I warned my daughter before we went to the Kotel. I said, oh, the old ladies are going to come. They're going to want tzedakah, and they're going to give you a red ribbon. Apparently, there was a problem, and those ladies are no longer at the Kotel. They just have tzedakah boxes on different parts of the Kotel to leave tzedakah. There are many reasons for the red string, and please do not go by Madonna. It's a Kabbalistic symbol, also ubiquitous around the world, but in medieval Kabbalah, which is a whole story in its own, how it developed, why it developed. It's a result of whenever there's difficult times and persecutions, mysticism rises. We know that that happened after World War II, where Chabad and so on rose in importance and significance because there's a need to answer questions. But the little string, if you were fortunate enough and to go to Israel, when you were able to visit the tomb of Rachel, when you were there, you can't go there any longer. They would have given you a little red string. The woman, when Bob and I went there, gave us a mishaberach for our children, our yet unborn grandchildren, our yet unborn great-grandchildren. She could not stop giving us the bracha, I think because Bob left a nice little tzedakah there. But, so why do we have red? We're back to blood. Because blood is life. Simple. You know that. If you lose blood too much, you will die. Blood is a symbol of life. That is one of the reasons you kosher your meat, to make sure that there is no longer any blood in it, because it would be eating life. The reason, incidentally, while we're at it, just parenthetically, I'll slip it in, you don't mix milk and meat. Besides the fact it's a law in the Torah, don't mix milk and meat, because in Judaism, you are never permitted to mix life and death. Milk symbolizes life, and blood symbolizes death. And therefore, meat is the animal itself, which has died. Milk is life that gives life to the humans and animals. So the red string has been around every culture, everywhere, to ward off evil. Again, I preface it by saying I'm not superstitious, but Michael called me about 2-3 weeks ago that he had bought a car for the kids. Again, I'm not superstitious. I left the house, ran to the store, bought a red ribbon, and dropped it off, so they would have it before they drove the car. My neighbor, who was Irish Catholic, whenever we would get, which was rare because my husband let the cars die before he replaced them, she would run over, give me a red ribbon, and throw coins in the car to make sure that I was safe in the car. So many cultures have very similar superstitions. Again, because they're our way of trying to control what we cannot control. You cannot control, God forbid, having an accident or something happened to the car. So by doing this, you feel that you have some sense of control. Then you say, see, I had the red ribbon in the car. Everything is fine. So now, some of our superstitions, and then I'm going to get to the evil eye and Kamsa, which is fascinating. But some of our superstitions are Christological. So whenever you say knock wood, that is an ancient Christian superstition based on the fact that if you even touched a piece of splinter of the crucifix upon which Jesus was crucified, that it will bring you luck and dispel any bad demons. The other one, which is basically Christological, but which I found out is always up in also in Norway, is the number 13. So in the United States, our culture, 13 is an unlucky number. Because according to ancient Christianity, Jesus was crucified on Friday the 13th. And that must have been on a Roman calendar, because you all know that the Seder, which was his Last Supper, is the 14th of the Hebrew month of Nisan and not the 13th. So when they say it was the 13th, it must have been a Roman calendar. So we attribute this bad vibe from the number 13 to his death. There's also a Norse tale far from the Middle East where number 13 is unlucky. And it reminded me of the Sleeping Beauty story. There were 13 Norse gods, and they didn't like the 13th because he was a demon. He was not a good god, he was a bad one. So they had a banquet and didn't invite him. That's why it's similar to Sleeping Beauty. He came, even though he wasn't invited, and he started a battle, and he wound up killing the good god. So in Norse mythology, 13 is also unlucky. Ironically, in Japan, number 4 is unlucky. And I don't know why. But I will tell you, so I called my younger daughter, who lives in a New York high-rise. And I asked her, I said, do you have a 13th floor in your building? And she laughed. She said, no. She said, it goes from 12 to 14. So she was hysterical. She said, it's the most stupid thing. Because even if you're not going to name it 13, it's a 13th floor. However, she once worked in a beautiful office building around the corner from Carnegie Hall. She said not only did they have a 13th floor, but she said that's where she was working. So it's not, many buildings do avoid the 13th floor. That's number 13 and the Christological elements that are in Judaism. Not in Judaism, but in life itself that we follow, and we don't really know where it came from. Now we have two very significant and well-known things. Again, I'm not superstitious. Ask me about my grandkids, I will immediately say to you, again, I don't speak Yiddish, B'li ayin hara, without the evil eye. I figure no harm comes if you just cover your bases. But the evil eye is also ubiquitous. It's not only ours, it's throughout every single culture. There is this concept that someone is watching, and if things are good, they're going to make them bad. If something good happens to you, there's always that fear, that envy, jealousy is going to make something bad happen. So whenever something good happens, we cover it by saying the evil eye shouldn't come. We should be free. The evil eye was such a potent belief, and still is, that there was a story about a man in Poland who had very, very fierce looking eyes. And you know, when you look at someone, their eyes are very telling. Well, he had very frightening eyes, so much so that many people were afraid of him, to the point that he literally gouged out his own eyes so people wouldn't see him. And I remember when I was in Prague, it was the anniversary of Kafka or something, and they had pictures of Kafka. Now, I read all of Kafka. I loved Kafka. The picture, he looked sinister. There was a look in his eye that was scary. Since civilization began in the Mediterranean countries, they fear people with blue eyes because people with blue eyes are different. Because in the Mediterranean, they're all dark skin, dark eyes. So they fear blue-eyed people and think that they are uniquely dangerous. The evil eye, and you know that it's an ornament. You can buy, actually Anne has a necklace with the eye on it. Why do we buy the eye? Because the good eye that we have will counter the bad eye who's waiting to pounce on you. Which sounds confusing, but that's why you have the eye. Sometimes the eye is combined with chamsa. Now the chamsa you all know about. You also know, if you have been to the shuk in Yerushalayim, if you go through the Jewish quarter, chamsas are all over the place. If you go through the Arab quarter, chamsas are all over the place. If you go to the Armenian quarter, they're all over. It's not just our symbol. And one of the writers even said that they're happy that this has come about in the marketplace. It's the hand. Supposedly the hand of God be caught. And it gets a little complicated. Chamesh is 5. Fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Anyone? Hey. Hey is the abbreviation for God's name. When we don't want to write out God's name, we write a hey. So the Chamsa is 5. Hey is an abbreviation for God's name. We look at the Chamsa and say it stands for the 5 books of the Torah. Islam looks at it and says, actually only the Sunnis look at it this way, say it's the 5 pillars of Islam. But whatever, it is a symbol of protection and God's caring for us. And sometimes to double your pleasure and double your protection, the Chamsa will have the eye on it. So you get double protection. That's the story of the Chamsa, which is beautiful, and I love it. The other thing which is very interesting is in northern Israel, and it's much more apparent in northern Israel. If you've been to the magnificent city of Tzfat, Safed in English, if you haven't been there, as soon as you can, go. But in Tzfat, you will notice, because it's a city that was founded by Kabbalists, the windowsills are painted with blue, which is a protection against evil creatures so they won't enter your home. You'll notice that when you go to certain towns in Israel, not the modern towns, the older cities, where you'll have blue windowsills. Marriage. There are certain superstitions about marriage. There are many more in the Sephardic customs. The Sephardim have many more superstitions during the marriage ceremony. In Poland and Germany, what they did during the marriage ceremony was cry. People would cry and mourn and carry on so that the evil demons that were waiting to bring unhappiness to the married couple would think it was an unhappy occasion and go away. Because if they knew it was a joyous occasion, they would have wreaked havoc. So that is one of the weird customs that we have around. There are some other very weird customs. And we'll just spend a few minutes on that before I take questions. When someone sneezes, you immediately say, or Gesundheit. That is from the 5th century of the Common Era, from Pope Gregory. There was, I hate to even say the word, a pandemic. And the first sign of your illness of that pandemic was not a fever, but was a sneeze. So Pope Gregory passed an edict that when you heard someone sneeze, you had to say, God bless you, so they would be saved. So Pope Gregory passed this edict. As soon as you hear someone sneeze, say, God bless you, and that will scare away the evil demons, and God will protect him. Our custom is not to say that for many reasons. First of all, we are not allowed to abuse, misuse God's name. So our custom is when someone sneezes, we say, la briut, may you have health. Now, another weird thing about sneezing is there is a superstition that if I'm talking to you and you sneeze, it means I told the truth, which also is that there's a mystique about sneezing, that there are demons that are trying to come out. There are many stories, again, because each culture has their own take on similar topics. We've covered, I think, many of the bases that are of interest, plus the personal superstitions that we all seem to carry with us. Right. Well, you know, the poo is people often spit, which is, again, a way of chasing away the evil spirits. There's a long German word that's a Beischerin or something in German, which is similar to what we say Kahana Hara. And that's what poo is.
Have you ever heard of the custom that if a Jew, or superstition that if you see a nun, you're supposed to grab onto a button?
No, I never heard that.
Oh, because I was going to ask you the origin. My late mother would always talk about that, and she just thought that it had something to do with the soul, that it was scary if you saw a nun or a priest, that you would grab onto a button.
You know, I looked at, there are many books about Jewish superstition, and the best one is a book by Joshua Trachtenberg called Jewish Superstition. I would have to look it up. That I never heard of.
In the same vein as the question about a button, if you see a nun, this woman has a story of knowing when you see a funeral procession.
Oh, yes. There's a funeral procession and you pull your ear.
She had hold the button.
She said what?
Hold the button on your sweater.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you had pulled the ear.
Right.
Why?
That one, I don't know. I know my husband always did that. I don't know why. There's also the superstition about salt.
Yes, that's the next question online.
Right, that you throw it over your shoulder because there are little demons back there. But you know that salt was one of the most valuable spices in the ancient world because they used it to preserve their food. So that if you wasted the salt, so you threw a drop so that the evil spirits would not come and attack you.
Very. My mother was highly superstitious. And one of the things, whenever a newborn was born in our family, not only with the red ribbon, a siddur with a knife in it. And to this day, I don't know what it means. I have no idea what it means, but it had to have a knife in the siddur under the mattress.
Where was your mother from?
Russia.
See, there are different superstitions from different locales, which brings me, and I'm just gonna say this, take a minute, because I don't wanna get too involved in it. When we lived in ghettos in Europe, in Venice, in Rome, and so on, we were not cut off from the rest of the world. The men would go out of the ghetto to work and so on. It was not, like, God forbid, I don't even want to say it, but there was a lot of flow. So a lot of these customs and superstitions came from the cultures in which we lived, because there was shared culture. That one I never heard of.
Another one, which all my friends now do, because I tell them to, if you lose something, you turn over a glass. And as soon as you find it, you turn it back over. And it seems to work all the time. And all my friends call me up, it worked.
Well, wait, Shirley Strauss has a better one. That's why
Yeah, I
said
lost
it.
my keys. I dumped out my purse 3 times. I couldn't find it. I called everybody, that I had gone to, CVS, whatever, and then I came back and I said, that's it. I just don't know where it is. I'm thinking my car key is $100, $200. I opened my purse to get something else and the string is hanging out. And I said, what is that? And it is the key. And not only is it the key, but it's this prayer that I keep in my purse, and it tells me, and I found the key. The prayer is Bahanes. It's in Safat, right?
There was a prayer for finding something. There's also one of the a Catholic saint that.
Saint Anthony.
Right.
Saint Gabriel. The Catholics make a prayer for Gabriel. He finds missing things.
Right. I have to look up the knife with the siddur.
I had one, when I was pregnant, my husband, my mother-in-law, and I had gone to the cemetery to see his father, my mother-in-law's husband. She wouldn't let me go into the cemetery.
Yes.
And I was fine and fit.
Yeah, but they're afraid that the souls will come out. There's also a superstition, which one of my neighbors had like a real mishigas about it, not to go to the cemetery when you have your period. And I know every year around the holiday, she would go crazy because, if I don't go and I can't go, which I never heard of and I never saw anywhere. But yes, I know the pregnant woman, you were supposed to stay away from the cemetery. A Kohen can't go to the cemetery in either case, unless it's a family member, one of the 5 blood relatives. But that has nothing to do with superstition. That's because his role in the community was that of the priesthood, which was in itself a very holy position, and he couldn't, because death is a great contaminator.
So with the pregnant and babies theme, someone online is asking that there's a tradition or a superstition to not stepping over a baby.
I will never step over a baby because you stunt their growth. So someone stepped over me. You'll never know who it was.
That was exactly the one that I was just gonna ask, but it wasn't about a baby. It was, I used to love to lay on the floor and read in the living room. And my sister always got yelled at if she'd step over me because it was bad luck. And my mother made her step back over me.
You never step over a person. I think that came because you could hurt them, but.
Right, thank you.
My mother believed in 3s. I mean, especially with death. So this was my whole life. So now if somebody dies already, I'm starting to count who's going to be the next one. And it's so sad to think of that. But she was so into the and all her
Yes,
sisters were like that.
Things happen in 3s. So if you have 2 good things happen, with 3rd, if you have 2 bad things happen, there's going to be a 3rd. And that's again, the number 3 has a certain mystical value. It may even be from the Trinity.
When you move into a new home, there's a tradition, you bring bread and salt and.
Oh,
stuff.
that to me is one of the most beautiful, that's not even a superstition. That to me is, I love it, and I usually do that. You bring flour, sugar, and salt. Right, because you want them to always have food, it's the bread, sugar to have a sweet life, and salt because it's the most valuable. And so that wishes them good luck. I love that tradition.
And someone in the back of the room is adding pennies to the list. Oh, pennies on the window as a source of abundance.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that. See, some of them are not superstitions, like that bread, sugar, and I mean, to me, that's just very meaningful. But there is a superstition, I didn't hear about the pennies of putting salt in the corners of the house. Because again, that was the most valuable thing, salt, so that it would keep the demons away and bring you luck.
I remember when I was growing up, that when you went to a wedding, if you were able to, if the man of the family was able to get a piece of the broken plate that they would give to their daughter, and the daughter is supposed to put it underneath their pillow at night, to bring you a good husband.
No, that's a piece of cake. Not the broken glass. The broken glass is never.
That's the reason it never worked.
Yeah, no, I remember as a kid, when my parents came home from a wedding, they'd always bring me a piece of cake to put under the pillow. And if you, when you sleep, you dream of who your future husband would be. The broken glass, is another thing that we've given a meaning to, and a very powerful meaning to, that it's a reminder of the destruction of the temple. It's also symbolic of marriage can easily be broken. So there are many things about the broken glass, but they wouldn't give someone a piece of the broken glass to put under their pillow. I never heard of that.
It's not the glass. It's a plate is broken before the wedding, the marriage ceremony by the two mothers.
Right.
And the pieces of the glass of the plate are usually given to unmarried women to take and either put.
Right, that's at the bedekin. That's when they put the veil over.
Well, yes,
and the mothers are there with the bride.
So
Yes, that's right.
That plate is given.
Yes, not the glass that symbolizes Yerushalayim.
What about the superstition of when you give a knife to a friend, they're supposed to give you a penny? I think that's the way it goes.
Right, so that you don't break the friendship. There was always that fear that the knife would symbolize that you're breaking the friendship. So if you don't give it, if you buy it, then it's a purchase that you've made, and therefore you will be safe, and the relationship will be safe.
And someone online asked about opening an umbrella indoors. Oh, a Jewish superstition? I don't think so.
No, that was actually a Roman superstition. That was not one of ours. And you know what? I read it and I sort of fluffed it off.
Okay, you fluff, we fluff.
Walking under a ladder, and you're not going to believe this, is an ancient Egyptian fear, because they, as you know from the pyramids, built in triangles, and therefore the ladder against the building forms a triangle, and you shouldn't disrupt the unity of the triangle. So that's why you didn't walk under a ladder. So, a lot of these, but that one, I don't know.
I got you. Black cats, I feel like they go with the ladder.
They go with the ladder because the Egyptians loved cats. And to the Egyptians, that was good. But the black cat, again, it's the color black, and it depends on the culture. But and the Middle East is full of cats. I mean, you walk the streets in Israel, I mean, that's all you see are cats. A totally black cat. Again, it goes with that. It's also Egyptian, and there was certain fear, again, because black is darkness, which is evil.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, everyone. Please give Miriam a round of applause.